Absolutely not. This does not belong in my cafeteria.
7-year-old Amir Hassan loved school. Every morning, he'd wake up early, pack his favorite lunchbox, the blue one with rockets on it, and wait by the door for his father to drive him to Riverside Elementary. Today was special. His mother had made him dolma, grape leaf stuffed with rice and spices, the same dish his grandmother made in Syria before the war, the same dish that made Amir feel connected to a home he'd never seen but heard about in bedtime stories. He couldn't wait to share it with his friends at lunch. What he didn't know, what no 7-year-old should ever have to know, was that in exactly 43 minutes, his teacher would grab that lunchbox, walk to the trash can, and throw it away in front of the entire cafeteria. And the reason why would shatter not just one child's heart, but an entire community's faith in the system meant to protect him. 11:47 a.m., lunchtime at Riverside Elementary. Amir sat at his usual table with his friends, Marcus, Sophia, and Jamie. He opened his lunchbox with the pride only a child can have when sharing something special. "My mom made this," he said, his dark eyes shining. "It's called dolma. It's from Syria. You want to try?" Sophia leaned in, curious. "It smells good. What's inside?" "Rice and meat and spices, my grandma's recipe." But before anyone could take a bite, a shadow fell across the table. Mrs. Patricia Henderson, third-grade teacher, 23 years at Riverside Elementary, known for her traditional values and high standards. "Amir Hassan," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "What is that?" Amir looked up, confused. "My lunch, Mrs. Henderson." "That's not appropriate for school." She reached down and grabbed his lunchbox. Amir's small hands tried to hold on. "But it's just food. My mom." "This is America, Amir. We eat American food here." The cafeteria started to go quiet, other kids turning to watch, teachers at the monitoring station looking over. But there was one thing he hadn't yet realized. Mrs. Henderson's next move would change everything. Mrs. Henderson walked across the cafeteria, Amir's lunchbox in her hand, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor. Every step, more kids stopped talking, more eyes turned to watch. She reached the large trash bin near the cafeteria entrance and dropped it. The entire lunchbox inside. The sound of it hitting the bottom echoed in the suddenly silent room. Amir sat frozen at his table, his friends staring, other kids whispering, some laughing nervously, others looking uncomfortable, not sure what they'd just witnessed. "Now," Mrs. Henderson said, turning back to face the cafeteria, her voice carrying across the room, "you let that be a lesson. When you come to this school, you follow our rules. You eat our food. You act like everyone else." She walked back to the teacher's table, satisfied she'd made her point. Amir didn't cry, not yet. He was too shocked, too confused. His bottom lip trembled, but he bit it hard, the way his father taught him. "Be strong, Habibi. Don't let them see you break." But inside, something did break. That invisible thing that makes a child feel safe at school. That trust that adults will protect you, not humiliate you. Sophia reached over and squeezed him under the table. "I'm sorry, Amir," she whispered. Marcus pushed his sandwich toward him. "Here, you can have half of mine." But Amir couldn't eat. He just sat there staring at the trash can across the room, where his mother's cooking, his grandmother's recipe, his connection to a country he'd never seen, now sat among discarded milk cartons and half-eaten pizza. That's when everything changed, because someone had been recording. Jamie's older sister Maria was a cafeteria aide. She'd been standing near the entrance when it happened, and she'd pulled out her phone. The video was shaky, the audio muffled, but you could see everything. Mrs. Henderson grabbing the lunchbox, Amir's small hands trying to hold on, the walk to the trash can, the drop, the sound. And worst of all, Mrs. Henderson's words caught clearly on audio. "This is America. We eat American food here." Maria posted it to her Facebook at 12:15 p.m. By 1 p.m., it had 500 shares. By 2 p.m., local news had picked it up. By 3 p.m., it was trending on Twitter with the hashtag Justice for Amir. But Amir didn't know any of this. He sat through the rest of lunch in silence, through math class staring at his desk, through reading time not reading a single word. All he could think about was going home and telling his father what happened, and the shame he felt, even though he'd done nothing wrong, even though he was just a child sharing his lunch. He felt shame. When Amir's father found out, his reaction would reveal a truth that would shake the entire school district. 3:30 p.m., school dismissal. Amir walked out to the pickup area, his rocket lunchbox, now empty and reeking of trash, clutched in his hand. He dug it out of the bin when no one was looking, couldn't bear to leave it there. His father, Dr. Kareem Hassan, waited in the car, smiled when he saw Amir. The smile faded the second he saw his son's face. "Habibi, what's wrong?" Amir got in the car, put on his seatbelt, stared straight ahead. "Amir," Kareem's voice went gentle, careful, the way you speak to something fragile that might shatter. "Talk to Baba." "Mrs. Henderson threw away my lunch." What?" "She said it wasn't appropriate for school. She said this is America and we eat American food here. She threw it in the trash in front of everyone." The words came out flat, emotionless, which was worse than crying, because it meant Amir had already learned to bury his feelings, already learned that showing hurt made you vulnerable. At 7 years old. Kareem's hands tightened on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched, but his voice stayed calm. "Did anyone else see this?" Amir nodded. "The whole cafeteria." "Okay," Kareem took a breath. "We're going back inside." "Dad, no." "Amir," Kareem turned to his son. "What that teacher did was wrong. Not you, not your food, not our culture. Her. And we're going to make sure this doesn't happen to another child. Ever." Dr. Kareem Hassan was no ordinary parent, and what he was about to do would change everything. Kareem and Amir walked back into Riverside Elementary at 3:47 p.m. The office secretary, Mrs. Chen, looked up. "Dr. Hassan, is everything okay?" "I need to speak with Principal Morrison and Mrs. Henderson now." The tone in his voice made Mrs. Chen pick up the phone immediately. Within 5 minutes, they were all in Principal Morrison's office. Principal Morrison behind her desk, looking confused. Mrs. Henderson sitting in a chair, arms crossed, looking annoyed at being called back after school hours. And Kareem standing with Amir beside him. "Dr. Hassan," Principal Morrison began, "what's this about?" "Ask Mrs. Henderson what she did at lunch today." Mrs. Henderson sighed. "If this is about the lunchbox incident, I was simply enforcing cafeteria standards. The food was a traditional Syrian dish my wife made," Kareem interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet. "Grape leaves stuffed with rice, a recipe passed down from my mother. My son was sharing his culture with his friends." "Dr. Hassan, I understand you're upset, but—" "You threw it in the trash, in front of the entire cafeteria. You told my 7-year-old son that his food, his culture, wasn't appropriate for America." Principal Morrison's face went pale. "Mrs. Henderson, is this true?" Mrs. Henderson lifted her chin. "The food had a strong smell. Other children were complaining. I made a judgment call about cafeteria environment." "Other children were complaining?" Kareem's voice rose. "Or were you uncomfortable with food that didn't look like a peanut butter sandwich?" "Dr. Hassan, I don't appreciate your tone, and I don't appreciate my son being humiliated for being Syrian." But the truly shocking thing was what Kareem said next. Kareem pulled out his phone, opened his email, turned the screen to Principal Morrison. "Do you know who I am, Principal Morrison?" She blinked, confused by the question. "You're Amir's father." I'm also Dr. Kareem Hassan, Chief of Pediatric Surgery at Boston General Hospital. I've performed over 3,000 surgeries on children, saved countless lives, published 72 papers on pediatric medicine. He scrolled through his emails. I'm also on the board of the Massachusetts Medical Foundation, which, as you may know, donated $2.3 million to this school district last year for STEM programs. Principal Morrison's face went from pale to white. And I'm the vice president of the Syrian American Educational Alliance. We've been working with the Department of Education on cultural sensitivity training programs for schools across the state. Mrs. Henderson shifted in her seat. But most importantly, Kareem's voice dropped, became quieter, more dangerous. I'm a father who watched his son's face when he came to my car today. A child who loves school, who loves learning, who was so excited to share his mother's cooking with his friends. He looked directly at Mrs. Henderson. And you took that joy. You threw it in the trash, along with his lunch. Principal Morrison found her voice. Dr. Hassan, I assure you this is not representative of our school's values. Then what are your values? Kareem asked, because right now your actions, or lack thereof, tell me that humiliating a Muslim child is acceptable, that cultural food is inappropriate, that being American means erasing where you came from. He pulled up another screen on his phone. This video has 47,000 shares right now. CNN just called me for comment. The local news wants an interview. The school board is calling an emergency meeting tonight. 6 p.m. that evening, Riverside Elementary Gymnasium. The school board had called an emergency public meeting. Word had spread fast. The video was everywhere. Parents were outraged. The community demanded answers. The gym was packed, standing room only, local news cameras in the back, reporters with notepads, parents with signs, protect all our children, and diversity isn't optional. Dr. Hassan sat in the front row with Amir and his wife, Lila. Beside them, a surprise to everyone, sat Sophia's parents, Marcus's family, and Jamie's mother. The school board sat at a long table at the front. Principal Morrison looked like she wanted to disappear. Mrs. Henderson sat alone on the side, her face red, her arms still crossed. School Board President Robert Chang called the meeting to order. We're here to address the incident that occurred in the Riverside Elementary cafeteria today, he began. We've reviewed the video, we've spoken with witnesses, and we've made some decisions. The room went silent. First, Mrs. Patricia Henderson, effective immediately, you are suspended pending a full investigation. Depending on the outcome, termination is a possibility. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Henderson's face went from red to purple. Second, we are implementing immediate mandatory cultural sensitivity training for all staff, not optional, mandatory. Parents started clapping. Third, we are creating a diversity and inclusion committee made up of parents, students, and community members. They will review all school policies to ensure this never happens again. More applause. And fourth, Chang looked directly at Dr. Hassan. We are formally apologizing to Amir Hassan and his family. What happened today was unacceptable, discriminatory, and absolutely against everything our school district stands for. Then something unexpected happened. 7-year-old Amir stood up. His father looked down, surprised. Habibi, you don't have to. I want to talk, Amir said quietly. Kareem nodded, helped him up to the microphone that had been set up for public comments. Amir was so small he had to stand on a step stool to reach it. His hands shook, his voice trembled, but he spoke. My name is Amir Hassan. I'm in 3rd grade. I like math and reading and soccer. The gym was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Today, my teacher threw away my lunch. She said it wasn't American food, but, he paused, gathering courage, but My mom made that food. It's from my grandma's recipe. My grandma, who I never met because she died in the war in Syria. People in the audience started wiping their eyes. When I eat dolma, I feel close to her. I feel close to my mom. I feel close to where my family comes from. His voice grew stronger. Mrs. Henderson said this is America and we should eat American food. But my dad says America is lots of different foods, lots of different people, and that's what makes it special. He looked directly at the school board. I don't want Mrs. Henderson to be fired. I just want her to understand. Food isn't just food. It's love. It's family. It's who we are. He stepped down from the stool. The entire gymnasium stood up and applauded. Some people were openly crying. Mrs. Henderson sat with her head down, her shoulders shaking, and Dr. Kareem Hassan pulled his son into a hug, whispering, "I'm so proud of you, Habibi." But the story doesn't end there. What happened next created a legacy that would change the school and the community forever. Riverside Elementary looked different now. The cafeteria had a new program, Taste of Home Fridays. Every Friday, students could bring traditional foods from their cultures to share. Indian samosas, Mexican tamales, Italian pasta, Chinese dumplings, Syrian dolma. The program was Amir's idea, so everyone can share where they come from. Mrs. Henderson did not return to teaching. She resigned during the investigation. But in her resignation letter, she included something unexpected, a handwritten note to Amir. Dear Amir, I am deeply sorry for what I did. I let fear and ignorance make me cruel to a child. You taught me more in your 2-minute speech than I learned in 23 years of teaching. I hope someday you can forgive me. I'm working to be better. Thank you for showing me I needed to change. Dr. Hassan framed the letter and put it in Amir's room. Not because she deserves praise, he explained, but because it shows that people can change, and that takes courage too. The diversity committee Dr. Hassan now chaired had implemented sweeping changes. Cultural celebration months, multilingual welcome signs, books in the library representing 47 different countries, a wall of heritage where students could share their family stories. But the most powerful change was personal. Sophia's family started a cultural potluck group. Once a month, different families would host dinners sharing their traditional foods and stories. 60 families joined in the first month. Marcus's parents, who'd never thought much about diversity before, became fierce advocates for inclusive education. Jamie's mother started a nonprofit, Every Lunch Matters, providing cultural foods to school cafeterias across the state. And Amir? Amir still brought dolma to school, but now on Fridays there was a line of kids waiting to try it. Everyone thought they knew the truth, but the real shock came a year later. It was a Friday, Taste of Home Friday. Amir, now in 4th grade, was sharing his mother's dolma with a group of 2nd graders who'd never tried it before. My grandma made this in Syria. She died before I could meet her, but when I eat this, I feel close to her, he explained, just like he did every time. My grandma died before I could meet her, but when I eat this, I feel close to her. A woman stood in the cafeteria doorway watching. She looked familiar, but different. Softer, tired. It was Mrs. Henderson. Principal Morrison saw her first, tensed, ready to intervene. But Mrs. Henderson held her hand. "I'm not here to cause problems," she said quietly. I wanted to see." She watched Amir with the 2nd graders, watched him share his food with pride instead of shame, watched other kids try it, make faces, some liked it, some didn't, ask questions, learn. Watched what should have happened a year ago. Principal Morrison walked over. "Patricia?" "I've been in therapy," Mrs. Henderson said, not taking her eyes off Amir. "Working on a lot of things, trying to understand why I did what I did. And fear. I was afraid of things changing, of the world looking different than when I grew up, so I tried to force everything to stay the same, even if it meant hurting a child. She finally looked at Morrison. I'm teaching now at a multicultural community center, ESL classes for immigrant families, trying to make amends, I guess. Morrison studied her. That's good, Patricia. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted to see what the school became, what it could have been all along if I hadn't been so... She trailed off. Amir looked up then, saw her. For a moment, they just looked at each other across the cafeteria. Then Amir did something no one expected. He picked up a small container of dolma, walked across the cafeteria, stopped in front of Mrs. Henderson. "Do you want to try?" he asked simply. Mrs. Henderson's eyes filled with tears. "Amir, It's okay. It's just food, but it's also love and family and where I come from." He smiled. "You should try it. My grandma's recipe is really good." Mrs. Henderson took the container with shaking hands, took a bite. "It's delicious," she whispered. "I know," Amir said. Then he went back to his friends. Mrs. Henderson stood there, crying quietly, holding a container of Syrian dolma, learning a lesson she should have learned a long time ago. That kindness is stronger than hate, that children can teach adults, and that healing is possible even after harm. 5 years later, Riverside Elementary won the National Award for Cultural Inclusivity in Education. Dr. Kareem Hassan gave the acceptance speech. Amir, now 12, stood beside him. 5 years ago, my son's lunch was thrown in the trash because it was different, Kareem said. Today, this school celebrates 63 different cultures, has Taste of Home programs that have spread to 240 schools nationwide, and has shown that diversity isn't something to tolerate, it's something to treasure. He looked at Amir. My son taught us that, a 7-year-old boy who chose to educate rather than hate, to forgive rather than hold grudges, to transform pain into purpose. Amir stepped to the microphone. When bad things happen, we have a choice, he said, his voice clear and strong now. We can let them make us bitter, or we can let them make us better. We can let them divide us, or we can let them teach us. My lunch being thrown away hurt a lot, but it started conversations, changed policies, brought people together. Sometimes the worst moments create the best transformations. So to anyone watching who feels different, who feels like they don't belong, who has ever been told their food, their language, their culture isn't appropriate, you belong. You matter. Your differences aren't something to hide. They're something to celebrate. And to adults, please listen to kids. Protect us. Learn from us. We might be small, but we have a lot to teach. The audience rose in standing ovation. And somewhere in a multicultural community center across town, Mrs. Henderson watched the live stream, crying, learning, changing. Because that's what this story is really about. Not just one lunchbox, not just one incident, but about how one moment of hate met with courage, grace, and wisdom can transform an entire community. One child, one lunchbox, one choice to be better. That's how we change the world, one dolma at a time.